being upbuoyed, being supported upon these winged winds of rapid joy. Look at the beauty of these words, winged winds of rapid joy, upheld to a light it could not always hold. Well, Sri Aurobindo speaks to us at length about light, and I would like to share that today. He says light is primarily a spiritual manifestation of the divine reality, illuminative and creative. Material light is a subsequent representation or conversion of it into matter for the purposes of the material energy. And of course, there is this long quote that I have never tired of quoting. And I'll begin. Our sense, by its incapacity, has invented darkness. In truth, there is nothing but light. Only it is a power of light, either above or below our poor human vision's limited range. For do not imagine that light is created by the suns. The suns are only physical concentrations of light, but the splendor they concentrate for us is self-born and everywhere. God is everywhere, and wherever God is, there is light. This is from the Hour of God. It's a beautiful quotation. And then we have from the Mother. Light is a general term. Light is not knowledge, but the illumination that comes from above and liberates the being from obscurity and darkness. Sorry, that is the Mother. And now we have one more. And this was shown to me by my friend Dimitri von Morenschild, who lived to the age of 100 in the ashram. And Mother wrote this to him, and he showed it to me in her own writing. The light is everywhere. The force is everywhere, and the world is so small. And Letters on Yoga, Sri Aurobindo writes, there is a divine light that leans over the world and is not only a far-off, incommunicable luster. The opening of the consciousness to the divine light and truth and presence is always the one important thing in the yoga. And we will go on now to the next page, which is page 44. And there's so much more from Sri Aurobindo in this canto. So let me take us to 44, and we'll be on that for a little while. It's a beautiful passage. Oh. We begin with, it left mind's distance from the truth supreme and lost life's incapacity for bliss. So this incapacity, this lack of strength or qualification, especially to be able to receive something, it lost it in this light that he has received. And then he writes, all now suppressed in us began to emerge. Thus came his soul's release from ignorance, his mind and body's first spiritual change. A wide God knowledge poured down from above. A new world knowledge broadened from within. His daily thoughts looked up to the true and one. His commonest doings welled from an inner light. We see this tremendous progress of the avatar now in a human body, and this progress beginning to emerge. Everything that had been suppressed in us began to emerge. His soul was released from ignorance. And note here that Sri Aurobindo capitalizes ignorance, and we have been through that before. And then there's a comma, because he says it's his mind and body's first spiritual change, not the ultimate, not the intermediate, the first spiritual change. And what happens in that first spiritual change? A wide God knowledge poured down from above. A new world knowledge broadened from within. His daily thoughts looked up to the true and one, both words capitalized, true and one. His commonest doings welled from an inner light. Now, in this sense of the word welled, we have to understand it in a different way. It rises up from an inner light. It springs up as water would gush from the earth. It springs up. It wells from an inner light. Now he says, awakened to the lines that nature hides, attuned to her movements that exceed our ken, he grew one with a covert universe. A few things here to look at. To attune something, it's to bring into a harmony, to bring into an accord or a sympathetic relationship. So he becomes attuned to her movements that exceed our ken. Sri Aurobindo uses the word ken a few times, and it means the range of knowledge or perception, our understanding of something. So he is awakened to the lines that nature, capital N here, hides, attuned to her movements that exceed our ken. He grew one with a covert universe. Now, I always used to say covert, because that was the American pronunciation. But Temi said, no, it's covert. That's the correct English pronunciation. So I use that now. What does it mean, actually, the covert universe? Well, it's a universe that's secret or hidden from our view or our knowledge. It's concealed. He grew one with a covert universe. So the universe opens to him. And what does he say? He says, his grasp surprised her mightiest energy springs. He spoke with the unknown guardians of the worlds. And here we have to take a little moment to understand through some of his disciples, Alok Pandey, Amal Kiran, Madhav Pandit, who these guardians of the worlds truly are. First, from Alok. The great gods who govern the worlds from above. These higher powers and beings are unknown to man, and yet without them, the world could not be. Amal tells us the subtle powers behind the surface reality were met by him because of the inner and higher consciousness he acquired, a consciousness by which he was open to a God knowledge and a world knowledge coming to him from above and from within. Madhav Pandit writes in his readings in Savitri, Volume 1, this creation is an ordered manifestation of the divine. There is a central will expressing the originating truth vision, impelling the whole movement. But also, there are special emanations from the divine charged with specific tasks in the organization and maintenance of the emerging creation. These are the gods and goddesses, deities, powers, and personalities that are in charge of their respective domains on different levels of existence. Each world has its own guardians entrusted by the Supreme Creative Spirit with the work of building and furthering the manifestation of the particular truth principle that pushes for expression in that world formula. And lastly, to end the sentence, Sri Aurobindo writes, forms he descried, our mortal eyes see not. To descry something, which is a unique word, is to see something clearly by looking carefully at it, to discover, to perceive it, to detect it. And what does he detect? Well, his wide eyes bodied viewless entities. He saw the cosmic forces at their work and felt the occult impulse behind man's will. Bodied, viewless entities. A difficult word here. Obviously, often it means furnished or provided with a body, embodied, gave shape to, gave a bodily form to, exhibited in outward reality. But he's bodying these viewless entities. He sees them existing in a bodily form, endowed with a material form. And what are they? He saw the cosmic forces at their work and felt the occult impulse behind man's will. Time's secrets were to him an oft-read book. The records of the future and the past outlined their excerpts on the etheric page. The etheric page is, well, the ether is supposedly the medium supposed by the ancients to fill the upper regions of space. So he sees them in the ether. Etheric here is used as an adjective for page, the etheric page. Now, I would like today for someone to read from where we began. Anyone who would like to read could read. And if no one comes forth, I'll choose someone, but I ask you to do this.
May I read, Savitri?
Please.
So, from that? No.
We could begin with All Now Suppressed in Us on page 44.
All now suppressed in us began to emerge. Thus came his soul's release from ignorance, his mind and body's first spiritual change. A wide God knowledge poured down from above. A new world knowledge broadened from within. His daily thoughts looked up to the true and one. His commonest doings welled from an inner life. Awakened to the lines that nature hides, attuned to her movements that exceed our ken, he grew one with a covert universe. His grasp surprised her mightiest energies of spring. He spoke with the unknown guardians of the world. Forms he described our mortal eyes see not. His wide eyes studied viewless entities. He saw the cosmic forces at their work and felt the occult impulse behind man's will. Time's secrets were to him an oft-read book. The records of the future and the past outlined their excerpts on the clearest page.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marjorie.
We'll continue then. We have a few minutes yet. One and harmonious by the Maker's skill, the human in him paced with the divine. His acts betrayed not the interior flame. This forged the greatness of his front to earth. Well, this is a difficult 4 lines because we see that Sri Aurobindo, as Ashwapati, has now become one and harmonious by the Maker's skill. And the human in him is pacing with the divine. But, and this was so evident to so many people, his acts betrayed not the interior flame. Sri Aurobindo was so humble that he rarely would say about himself. We are very fortunate to have the book on himself because it was sometimes pulled out of him by his disciples asking him questions. So this actually forged the greatness of his front to earth. Now we have 2 words here, forged and front. To forge something is not something that we would normally understand from the usual definitions of the noun, which is, a fireplace, a forge, but from the verb. And it means to form something, of course, not by heating or beating or hammering into shape, but to make by a concentrated effort or energy. So this shaped the greatness of his front to earth. The front is basically here his face, how he faced the earth. There are so many definitions of front, and they can be a demeanor or a bearing, which is very true also in this line. Especially, it says in the presence of danger or difficulty, but we don't even have to go into that here, because what forged his greatness, what forged the greatness of his front to earth, is that his acts were one and harmonious by the Maker's skill, and they paced in him with the divine, and yet didn't betray the interior flame. A genius heightened in his body's cells to increase the quantity or degree of, to intensify, to heighten. A genius heightened in his body cells that knew the meaning of his fate-hedged works. And Sri Aurobindo gives us a few very important keys to this word that we often call fate. And he says in his letters on yoga, the Indian explanation of fate is karma. We ourselves are our own fate through our actions, but the fate created by us binds us. For what we have sown, we must reap in this life or another. Still, we are creating our fate for the future, even while undergoing old fate from the past in the present. This gives a meaning to our will and action, and does not, as European critics wrongly believe, constitute a rigid and sterilizing fatalism. But again, our will and action can often annul or modify even the past karma. It is only certain strong effects called utkata karma that are non-modifiable. Here too, the achievement of the spiritual consciousness and life is supposed to annul or give the power to annul karma. For we enter into union with the will divine, cosmic or transcendent, which can annul what it had sanctioned for certain reasons, new create what it had created. The narrow fixed lines disappear. There is a more plastic freedom and wideness. Neither karma nor astrology, therefore, points to a rigid and forever immutable fate. I know that Sri Aurobindo has written, I've read it many times, that even if the divine will not grant us a relief from a certain fate, because we have to go through it, he still puts a check mark in our credit page. Vladimir, can you enlighten us a little bit more on the Uttaka karma?
Yes, I cannot really know more.
It's a very difficult word to understand, isn't it?
No, the word is actually quite easy, but the
idea.
The concept is, so you can see utkata. That is the hard, harsh, something immense, gigantic, excessive, much, superior, difficult, something more like harsh and rough, and something solid. But yes, what it means in terms of karma most probably something like a residue or some quintessential part of it, or some part which remains anyhow, which has its right to be anyhow, even if it is not attached to you anymore. It will be somewhere there in the in the universal storage, which he also mentions here with this etheric etheric
Yes,
pages,
yes, yes,
akashic records, everything
exactly.
is there. So he's using the same imagery of what is used in the Vedas and post-Vedic literature, Upanishads, by the way. Same ideas are just put into English language. And even these guardians which you were mentioning, he speaks about the guardians of light, the four kings, yes, whom he most probably mentions here because they're capitalized. This
Yes,
Varuna, Mitra, Yaman, Bhaga, these four great guardians of light who represent the purity of the divine existence, the luminosity of the divine consciousness, the bliss, and the force, the power, tapas. So this is Satchit Tapas Ananda, actually, the guardians of light or the guardians of the world. They are present throughout the universe. They are acting upon us, upon
yes,
everything. But we do not have contact with them. They are unknown to us.
yes. Thank you, Vladimir. I will continue so we can finish the sentence, and then we'll pick it up again next week. He says more about fate in Essays Divine and Human. He says fate is God's foreknowledge outside space and time of all that in space and time shall yet happen. What he has foreseen, power and necessity work out by the conflict of forces. And in Essays in Philosophy and Yoga, he writes, this is the great truth now dawning on the world, that will is the thing which moves the world, and that fate is merely a process by which will fulfills itself. So, let me begin from a genius heightened in his body's cells that knew the meaning of his fate-hedged works, akin to the march of unaccomplished powers, beyond life's arc in spirit's immensities. Apart he lived in his mind's solitude, a demigod, shaping the lives of men. We could talk so much on that next week, but I'll finish the sentence. One soul's ambition lifted up the race. A power worked, but none knew whence it came. And so we've used our time today. We'll pick this last part up tomorrow on the powers, the unaccomplished powers, and to the end in the next page. Thank you all for attending. These moments,
Thank you, Narad.
you're welcome. These moments of Savitri are such a blessing for us to participate in because they give us the opportunity to come closer to Sri Aurobindo and Mother. Namaste.
Namaste, Narad.
Namaste.